Push and hold. Okay.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, viewers online. Welcome to the first press conference of this year's COP30. My name's Wendy Broadgate. I'm the Global Hub Director of Future Earth, and I'll be moderating this press conference. The press conference is about this report, the 10 new insights in climate science, produced by Future Earth, the Earth League, and the World Climate Research Program every year. It's produced by more than 70 scientists from more than 20 countries, and it's an annual synthesis of the latest advances in climate change research, from natural sciences through the social sciences and policy implications. It's based on a peer-reviewed paper, and multiple peer-reviewed papers underpin the report. I have on stage a number of experts, and once we've gone through the report very briefly, I will be inviting questions. We're also delighted to have on stage Mrs. Cecilia Kinutia Ngenja from the UNFCCC. Cecilia is Director of Intergovernmental Support and Collective Progress from the UNFCCC, and I'd like to hand the word to you, Cecilia.
Thank you very much, Wendy. It's really a great pleasure for me to be joining you here ahead of the official opening of COP30 here in Belém. So I'm really excited that we start with the science, being the director, not only responsible for intergovernmental support, but also being responsible for the research and systematic observation work of the UNFCCC. I join you here on behalf of Mr. Simon Steele, who could not be able to join us, but he is with us and believes in the importance and centrality of science because he's very busy now preparing for the opening ceremony of this conference. So it's a pleasure to join you today for the launch of the 10 new insights in climate science. These new insights from Future Earth, the Earth League, and the World Climate Research Program, who are indeed our partners also, demonstrate how the latest research and science is central in informing and strengthening global response to climate change. And as we gather this morning here in Belém at the gateway of the Amazonia, we are reminded of the accelerating changes across the climate system, from increase in global warming, sea level rise, ocean warming, and extreme events occurring globally, which are impacting lives and livelihoods. Colleagues, our understanding of the global climate and its impacts of collective climate action and effectiveness of our global policies is increasingly tremendously with appreciation of efforts from the scientific and research community. In these critical decade and here at COP30, actionable and timely insights from this community should continue to form the basis for collective response, from identifying emerging climate risks, informing planning and monitoring effectiveness of adaptation, to understanding the impacts of climate change on ecosystems and biodiversity and tracking greenhouse gas emissions. Science will be enabling policymakers throughout the next 2 weeks to base their decisions on independent evidence. The UNFCCC process continues to welcome and provide platforms for latest science to directly inform the global response to the climate crisis. We therefore need insights like this, and I'm really proud to be one of the first owners of this report, and these will directly inform the global response to the climate crisis. These insights will deepen our understanding of the changing climate, but also accelerate solutions. And hence, the role of the work of Future Earth and other research and scientific bodies cannot be overemphasized. In this critical decade, scientific evidence in all forms, from the social to the natural science disciplines, from various geographies and knowledge systems, including indigenous knowledge, should continue to be made available systematically to our policy makers. So let me conclude by commending Future Earth and its partners for their continued commitment to bridging science and policy. Partnerships with research institutions, scientific networks, and bodies such as these are essential for us and valuable to our process. It's my belief that the new insights will enrich our discussions here at COP30 and ensure that the UNFCCC process continues to be rooted in the best available science. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, for those important words. And thank you also for prioritizing this press conference, the launch of this report at this very busy time for you. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Professor Johan Rockström, Director of the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research in Germany, to introduce the report and go through it very briefly. Over to you, Johan.
Thanks, Wendy, and thanks, Cecilia, and great to see you here this morning. So this is what science today concludes is what every negotiator at COP30 in Belém must be up to date on in order to be an effective negotiator. It's nothing less than that. The concluding message from this year's 10 New Insights in Climate Science is that we are deepening our scientific concerns over our ability to provide a safe climate future. Even if the NDCs were implemented, we're following a path of disastrous outcomes as global temperatures may be exceeding 2.5 degrees Celsius of global mean surface temperature rise. If all the plans are implemented, emissions may fall by approximately 5% from now until 2030. Science shows clearly that this is the pace of emission reductions that have to occur as a minimum every year. It's not enough to do that over 10 years. And emissions need to be reduced by 40 to 45% by 2030. And these calculations, which is exactly one of the key messages in this 10 NICs, are not calculated based on the latest indications of accelerated warming, lowered carbon uptake on land, and signs of feedbacks which are self-amplifying warming. So the 10 NICs shows that we may have to go even faster in phasing out fossil fuels. We do not need more negotiations on rules for the process. The Paris rule book is complete. As president for the COP30, André Correa do Lago has emphasized, we're now in an implementation phase. This COP and all future COPs must be on delivery. The role of the COP must be reformed from negotiating formalities to focusing on credible and science-aligned actions and accountability. And this is what makes this year's TEDx so important, because the key findings in summary is that number 1 to 4 is the latest evidence of accelerated warming. Science is getting really nervous. Is Earth losing its resilience? Our carbon and heat uptake capacity is going down. Is the cooling capacity now being weakened? Insights 5 to 7 focus on impacts. These impacts are rising and starting to hurt people across the entire planet. And we see increasing impacts both in terms of health and in terms of labor productivity. And Insights 8 to 10 focuses on what we need to do to take us out of this impasse. So let's walk them through very quickly. Insight number 1 is the evidence and uncertainty related to accelerated warming. 2023 and 2024 are record years of unprecedented heat, of up to 0.3 degrees Celsius of abrupt warming. You can take that next one. You're right. There we are. And what we have evidence-wise is that we do understand that El Niño, a natural phenomenon, is a significant part of explaining this bump up in abrupt warming, but it cannot explain everything. We also need to factor in that the energy imbalance, the heat injection caused by human interference, is also related to shifts in albedo, which is that the planet is getting darker and absorbing more heat than is reflecting back to space, which has to do with an interaction between reduced air pollution, which paradoxically is very positive for reducing health impacts on people, but also bumps up warming, but it interacts with moisture in the atmosphere, which causes more cloud at the lower atmosphere, which then absorbs more heat. This is a combination of forcing, which is concerning enough, but is something we can reduce, but also feedbacks, which we actually may not be able to mitigate ourselves, which is a concern of perhaps permanent changes. Insight number 2 is that we're seeing the same concerns in the ocean. We're seeing an acceleration of ocean warming. This is an unprecedented record in sea surface temperature rise in 2023 and 2024. And this is the largest sink on planet Earth. 90% of the heat caused by our fossil fuel burning is actually absorbed in the ocean. And the ocean heat waves, bleaching occurrences, and ecosystem collapses are now increasing in frequency and in severity, causing also reinforced extreme events such as Hurricane Melissa. Insight 3 is on the observations that also the land sink on land is showing signs of weakness, particularly in the northern hemisphere. This is data on the latest observations and modeling of carbon uptake on land. What you see here is a flattening out of the curve. So on the right-hand side, you see that from roughly 2016, we have a direction of a net decline in carbon uptake capacity in forest systems in the northern hemisphere. So here we're talking about temperate forest, boreal forest, and permafrost systems that shows the first signs of shifting from net sink to net source. Again, a feedback where the planet seems to be showing signs of weakening. We also have a lot of scientific evidence today that climate change does not occur in isolation. It interacts with biodiversity, and these interactions, when we lose biodiversity, particularly through expansion of agriculture and deforestation, such as in the Amazon basin, combined with the impacts of climate change, we get a reinforcement which amplifies warming, adds more loss of species, and loses resilience in the system to buffer the stress caused by our climate impacts. We're talking big numbers here, that if we continue emitting emissions just like today, we may lose somewhere between 10 and 100 billion tons of carbon just through interactions with ecosystem changes. And remember, we emit only 10 per year from fossil fuel burning. So we're talking big power from nature. Insight 5 is about climate change accelerating the loss of groundwater and groundwater depletion. I'm really sorry that the pressing of... So here's the data related to species loss, which you find in the report. Climate change is also accelerating groundwater depletion. This is an effect which is causing impacts on food security across the world, particularly impacting in semi-arid and arid regions in the world. Insight number 6 is that rising temperatures, as we know, but now we have even more evidence, are causing movements towards new latitudes of infectious diseases, and in particular the evidence on how temperature rise drives larger outbreaks of dengue fever. The evidence here is also very well established today, moving into regions in the world where both transmission periods get longer, but also a larger new infectious pressure on human societies that we had not experienced previously. Number 7 is that increased heat stress is impacting on global productivity and incomes. So we're now having more and more evidence that climate change, if you factor in only heat waves, already just heat waves, has impacts on the economy and direct impact on loss of incomes, and particularly for emerging economies in the global south, but actually impacting on the entire global economy. And we have data here showing that already by 2050, we may be talking of somewhere between 5 to 10% losses in income in certain regions of the world. Insight number 8 is that scaling carbon dioxide removal technologies are necessary. We have so much heat already loaded into the climate system. We have such a high energy imbalance, which means that we have such a large debt to be able to escape away from the overshoot that we're heading towards, meaning overshoot beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, that we need to start scaling carbon dioxide removal technologies very fast. And the question is, do we have the technologies for this? All forms of carbon capture and storage, direct air capture. This is one of the discussions that will certainly be part of this year's COP. What we want to scientifically remind everyone of is that without carbon dioxide removal technologies, the pathway to a safe climate future is, we conclude today, impossible, because then the remaining carbon budget is down to 130 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to 3 years of emissions. If we add carbon dioxide removal, we get a carbon budget which is closer to 400 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which gives us a chance of an orderly phase out of fossil fuels. So remember that in any discussion on the most ambitious pathways to climate mitigation, as I mentioned in the beginning, 40 to 45% reductions by 2030 and having 5% reductions per year, that requires CDR scaling. It requires CDR scaling. If we fail on CDR, then we have to reduce emissions by over 10% per year. So this is really significant to remember that we have to phase out fossil fuels and scale CDR at the same time. Insight 9, finally, stronger standards on transparency are needed in voluntary carbon markets to ensure integrity, to ensure permanence, and to ensure that we do not use voluntary carbon markets as a way to hide the inability to phase out fossil fuels. Investments in nature are needed, nature climate solutions are needed, different forms of Article 6 carbon credit systems are needed, but they have to be complementary. That's what science says. And finally, on the 10th insight is that there's increasing science showing that policy mixes are required to be efficient in real reductions of emissions and for adaptation investments. Singular policies won't do it alone. It's not enough to have a price on carbon alone. You have to have a price on carbon together with regulatory frameworks on compliance and reduced subsidies to have a policy mix that really gives you the efficient outcomes for the future. And we have a lot of evidence to back this in the report. And that is the summary of the 10 New Insights of Climate Science 2025. Back to you, Wendy.
Thank you very much, Johan Rockström. So now it's over to questions from you, the media. I have on stage, in addition to Professor Rockström, I have Dr. Regina Rodriguez, Professor Regina Rodriguez, who is from the Federal University of Santa Catarina here in Brazil. And also I'd like to welcome Professor Daliang Chen from Tsinghua University in China. So please raise your hand, we'll give you a microphone, and please identify yourself with your question. Do we have any questions?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
thank you.
Please go ahead.
So this increase and this acceleration in the warming that is happening, what does that, in terms of sea surface temperatures, what does that mean for coastal economies and sort of marine biodiversity, specifically across the sort of the near shore area?
Would you like to take that, Regina, or Daliang, please?
Okay, I can start, maybe, or?
You go as close as you can to
start.
the mic, it's quite noisy.
It's just just in Brazil, the economy linked to the coastal regions is around 3 billion reais. So this increase in sea surface temperature are causing coral bleaching also in our coast here, but globally, obviously. But this is considered, the coral reefs in Atlantic is considered to be the most resilient ones, and is already suffering with that. That we are having reductions on fisheries and also and the quality of the water too, as a result of this increase in temperatures that affect all tourism and everything, and impacts the coastal regions. Not mention the sea level rise, just the direct impact on ecosystems and all the economic activities that we depend on.
I may add that the question about the sea surface temperature is a worry one, because we know that the global mean temperature has been increasing, and as also a high record speed. At the same time, we've never seen that the marine temperature, especially sea surface temperature, all of the world has been warming in such a high rate. And we have mentioned that El Nino, for example, is a natural phenomenon, typically is in Pacific. But over the last 2 years, we see that everywhere in the ocean, the temperature has been really on record high, which have a lot of impacts on marine ecosystem, economy, and also the human, the neighbor costs, which through the trading will affect the world economy, not just locally in your country, for example, but also worldwide.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? We have a question at the front here.
Hi, thank you all. My name's Lisa Williams. I'm with Pacific Island Times in the Pacific. Thank you for the presentation that you've all done. Very alarming, I'm sure, for many of our countries that depend on fishes and protein from the ocean. But next month, 2 weeks after this meeting finishes, the Pacific Tuna Commission will be meeting in the Philippines, and they'll be discussing compliance, the usual issues around management. What would each of you tell that commission with the findings that you have?
Thank you, Lisa. So what would we tell the Commission considering tuna fisheries? Regina?
Yeah. So
Go really close. It's hard to hear.
yeah, this warming and all these physical aspects that are putting pressure in the ecosystems. One way, until we reduce the emissions and reduce this heat, we needed to protect these ecosystems. So the strong message would be stop the overfishing. We have to give a chance for these ecosystems until we decrease the heat into the ocean. And this will take some time in acidification and all the other aspects, things that are more ready to do to protect these ecosystems and their health would be decreasing the overfishing and improving the quality, like pollution, decrease the pollution and everything. So this is very important that this message of the sea surface temperature accelerating and the ocean temperatures accelerating, and this will take time to reverse these aspects. And meanwhile, we need to protect them. So it's really important that we have actually policies that reduce overfishing, for instance, and keep all the aspects of the health of the ocean, like pollution, while we don't get this reduction in sea surface temperature.
Regina, go ahead, Daylan.
For me, as an atmospheric scientist, I usually say the atmospheric inertia is much lower than the ocean. Now we see the ocean has been warming and record high speed. The sea surface temperature, sea level is on the record level. This is an indication that this kind of cumulative effect will be lasting longer. And so we really have to be worried, we need to be concerned, and also we really need to take action now, because this effect we have been seeing over the last 2 years or so will continue to be the case.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Any further questions from the audience? So I have a question at the back here. There's a lady at the back.
Hi, I'm Sienna Bassi. I'm from the International Association for Human Values. Thank you so much for talking about climate science here, because obviously this data should influence the future decisions. Do you think that now, in 2025, policymakers still need to be further educated about climate science and about future projections? Or do you think that they already know this and something else needs to push their priorities? Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to take that question? Yep, go on.
Yeah, so I think in a way the answer is obvious, because we do produce the 10 new insights in climate science each year because science is continuously advancing. We understand both risks, but also responsibilities, equity dimensions, and opportunities much better, and it's moving very fast, both in terms of risks, but also in terms of our understanding and the evidence on solutions. So yes, I think we need a continuous education of policymakers and continuous update for all the persons representing us in these negotiations. So for example, just the fact that even the most ambitious climate policy in the world today is not aligned with the latest science with regards to risk. That actually, if you take the latest science seriously, you would have to move even faster away from danger, which means investing even more in phasing out fossil fuels and in investing in adaptation. That's what the latest science shows, and that is, I think, a responsibility for our policymakers to keep themselves update with that science. It should be a science-guided journey.
Here, Johan. So we have 3 minutes left. If you're a journalist and you have a burning question, please wave at me so that we can cover all of your questions. Obviously, our authors will be available throughout the week to do private interviews if you are interested. Is there a final question from anybody in the room? Right at the back there.
Hi, yes. I have a question in regards to Insight 3 regarding the weakening of carbon sinks. What are the solutions when it comes to that? Should we protect the forests we have? Should we plant more forests? And what does this mean in terms of implications for nature-based solutions? Thank you.
Who would like to take that? Give it a go.
Yeah, thanks. No, this I would say is overwhelmingly clear that we need to, number one, stop the expansion of agriculture and urban areas into the remaining intact nature on planet Earth. We've transformed approximately 50% of the land areas on planet Earth into agriculture in particular, and we now have to recognize that we've come to the end of the road of that journey. We need to protect remaining nature. Secondly, we need to invest in regenerating and all forms of effort of reestablishing ecosystems. We know that this is possible and we need to invest more in that. But remember that that has to happen simultaneously as we phase out fossil fuels. We cannot choose to do one instead of the other. We have to do both, and it's urgent, and we need to do everything we can, because in my personal view, this is one of the most worrying signs that planet Earth seems to be showing signs of weakness. That these first signs that the system has not in any way tipped over, but it's showing signs of weakness, and that is, of course, a very important opportunity and responsibility for us to deviate away from danger by protecting nature. And of course, the Amazon basin is a perfect example of that.
Thank you, Johan. Well, we've run out of time now. We've reached the end of this press conference. Thank you very much for joining us for the launch of the 10 new insights in climate science. Thank you to all the speakers, Johan, Regina, and Daliang, and have a good COP. And use the science.